You're the guy people call when they need a helping hand, moving furniture, unloading a truck. But lately, your shoulder's been acting up, and you're the one who's calling for help. And that's the moment you realize you can no longer shoulder the load.
The Joint and Spine Center is Cincinnati's leading destination for orthopedic care with a range of surgical and non-surgical treatments. So when a moment has the power to change the rest of your life, go to the one place with the power to change it for the better. The Christ Hospital Health Network. This changes everything.
The Pound This Podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This Podcast, episode 631, the Daily Weigh-In. How do I stop bored eating?
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Oh, well, hi there. Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I am Amanda Valentine, and this is the Daily Weigh-In where I take your questions, mostly from my Instagram at You Can Pound This, and I answer them to the best of my abilities. So that's what I'm going to do right here, right now. If you ever have any questions, you can always shoot me an email, amanda@amandavалентиnebites.com. And just to give you some background on some of the answers for these questions. So if you're new here, thank you for listening. I have been obese for most of my life and then yo-yo dieted for a decade. And then in 2012, made a New Year's resolution just to make the best decision possible in every moment and just be healthier and happier in my own skin without a diet. From there, I've lost over 100 pounds and maintained and done all sorts of crazy stuff. I quit a 20-year broadcasting career to work in health and fitness a year ago, right before the pandemic hit. Now I am a certified personal trainer. I am a certified nutrition coach and just doing my thing. So I would say that my answer to these questions come from, now a background in working in this industry, but, from my own experiences and all the conversations I've had with so many incredible people that I have met doing this podcast for the past 3 years now. Isn't that bonkers? I've been doing this podcast for 3 years. Crazy. Anywho, today's question is, how do I stop bored eating? And that is a great question. And I almost even want to say that it's probably not even as much bored eating as it is distracted eating or numb out eating. And, it's just one of those things like I know I associate with like watching TV and eating as relaxation. So even if I'm not hungry, it's like I've trained myself that that's when it's relaxing time. So I want to eat and watch TV to relax. If you can relate to this, finding exactly what you want to watch on Netflix or whatever. And then you start it and then you start eating. And it's the experience of like eating and watching the thing and numbing out and distracting yourself from like life, because life can suck, right? So yeah, cool story, Amanda. How do we stop that? Well, one, I'd say, I don't know if you can make it completely stop, but it's going to be a practice and it's not going to be an easy shift to kind of retrain yourself out of that. I'd say step one is to acknowledge that you're doing it. Notice it when you're doing it. Of really thinking whenever you're grabbing for whatever you're going to eat, like, am I really hungry right now? Or am I looking to distract myself? Kind of like getting on your phone and watching TikToks or watching TV or whatever you use to distract yourself. And think of like, am I just trying to fill the space and fill the void and not really deal with other things? Am I bored or am I really hungry? And so I think that's step one, is to get into the habit of asking yourself those questions when you're feeling the urge to do that. And that is a hard step in itself. And that is difficult. And that is something that you should celebrate noticing. That is not a small thing. I know it's not like dropping 100 pounds and you'd feel like, oh, that's not an accomplishment unless I can see these huge measurable gains. But no, that's huge. That is huge. If you think about how much time a lot of us, or even you, have just spent behaving that way without thinking about it. So that's a huge step of getting into the habit of recognizing when you're doing that. And then from there, it's like, okay, so what do I do with this now? I recognize this is what I'm going to do. Do I go for the chips and just go for it anyway? Or do I want to do something else? What feels best for me right now? A good litmus test that I do for myself in that moment of thinking I'm hungry Well, okay, we'll eat some vegetables then. And if I'm like, no, I want cookies. Duh, carrots are stupid. Then I'm like, okay, this goes into cravings, not hunger. This goes into distraction, especially if I'm like, I need something with a lot of hand to mouth motion. You know what I'm talking about? Like a popcorn, chips, where you're just the volume, you know what I mean? Of like, is it that thing? And can I satisfy that with like fresh vegetables or a healthier snack? And if the answer is like, then again, that's not hunger. It's recognizing that's distraction. It's emotional eating or whatever it is. And then being like, well, okay, well, why can't I just eat the vegetables then? And if you're just like at a hard no to like, hey, have some cucumbers, you know what I mean? Like, again, this is just a test. I'm not saying this is exactly what you have to do. I never want to tell anybody exactly what to do. I'm just giving you a reference point of what to think in your own head. I've been like, I absolutely am not going to just eat the vegetables. And then we're like, well, then you got to make a choice, yes or no. Is it go ahead and eat the pile of brownies, or is it nothing? If you're going to refuse to like eat fruits or vegetables or eat a healthier snack, that's just something that you're going to like. And I go through this conversation all the time. I've been doing this now for almost a freaking decade at this point, which isn't that crazy, of living this healthier lifestyle. And that's a conversation I still have with myself often. So thinking that you're automatically just going to get rid of boredom eating or get rid of emotional eating or distracted, numbing out eating, I think is an unrealistic goal, because there's always going to be temptations. If that's something that you've lived off of and survived on for a very long time, that's a hard time to kind of reprogram that out of you, right? So give yourself some space here. It doesn't have to be like, why do I feel this way? I'm a failure. I'm not living this healthy lifestyle, because a healthy lifestyle means I don't have these urges anymore. That is absolutely not true. So knock that off and just realize that it is a practice. It's a conversation every time. And then it becomes finding your own list of a new distraction or a different thing to fill that space with. If you notice you're doing that and you're using the food as a numbing, distracting, not boredom thing anymore, what else can you do when you're having those urges? Could you just like go for a walk? Could you drink some water? I'm not saying that these are the things that you have to do. It's whatever you feel better in that moment about doing. Is it doing a quick exercise? Is it pulling up a YouTube video and doing, whatever it is, a quick yoga, a quick HIIT or whatever, just doing it like just to distract yourself and do the exercise? Or is it just finding something else of like work on a project? It's like, okay, well, I have this hobby, or I'm going to pick up my book and just do this for 10 minutes. And if it still comes back to I'm just thinking about food, then maybe that's the decision then you make of like, let's go for it then. You know what I mean? Like there's no shame in going ahead and eating those things, those quote unquote bad foods, which I'm not a fan of saying there's good or bad foods, but it's just the decisions you make, and to feel good about like, yes, I went ahead and ate the brownies, but I stopped myself. I had a conversation about it. And this I felt was the right decision for me right now. And I thought it through. That's a win. You know what I mean? Of like, that's the hard part. That is the work. Just thinking about whenever you go to the gym or whatever. A big part of the work is actually putting the clothes on, lacing up the shoes, leaving the house and getting there. Like that's usually the hardest part. And it's not even the actual exercise. So, because it's like when you're already there, then you're like, well, I'm already here. Let's go ahead and bang this thing out. And you usually feel really good afterwards, right? And you're proud of yourself. Same thing. The hardest part of this too is just to go through that conversation in your head. Just like, do I go to the gym? Do I need to put my shoes on? Do I need to leave that? Do I have to go through all this? Or even if you're doing at-home workouts, it's still changing into the clothes, getting the space ready, having, it's the preparation to it is work. And I think that we often don't recognize how much work that is, or to be proud of that process. We're proud after the workout when we're sweaty and we can take the social media shot of like workout done, which is awesome. I'm not shaming that at all, but it's also the win is like, I showed up today. Like it was half of the battle was just getting here, and thinking of when you're just want to use food as that numbing agent or distracting agent. Half of the work is to recognize that that's what you're doing. think it through and make a choice and land on whatever the choice that makes you feel best. And that is a practice that, I mean, if you notice that's what you do, then you're going to have to work on to make it better. And it doesn't mean every single time it's going to your home run, knock it out of the park. Same thing with me and like binge eating and stuff like that. It's not like it was an overnight cure. It's like sometimes you still go into binges, but I go into less binges than I used to. And that's the win. It's a stair step. It's these small baby steps, think about What About Bob and the baby steps. And if you haven't seen What About Bob, stop listening to this podcast and go watch What About Bob. That movie rules. For real, I love that movie so much. And so then the list is like, for me, is the vegetable test is something that I go through. Yeah, go for a walk, drink some water, do an exercise, call a friend. What else is there to kind of, change the distraction in a distraction that makes me feel good? Or also there's some of the other little tricks of like, well, brush your teeth. If you brush your teeth, then your, Oreos taste disgusting after that. So then, maybe that's a distraction too. Again, if it goes into the cravings realm versus actual hunger. And that's something that I really didn't separate from each other for a very long time. And it's just all such a process to get your mind in that place. So that's what my answer is to stop bored eating. And I'm sorry it wasn't just like this bullet point list of like, here's the things that you have to do. And when you do these things, you are winning at life. Because if that existed, we'd all be crushing it in every way. If there was just an awesome bullet point list telling us exactly what to do when it worked for every single person. Wouldn't that be amazing? Here's the 5 things you got to do to lose weight and it just works for every single person on the planet. Cool. No. So it's all just kind of learning you and the best things that work for you and finding the better distraction for the boredom than, the behavior that you don't like anymore. And that doesn't just go with food, that goes with anything. So I hope that answers that question. And if you ever have any more questions, again, email me, Amanda@AmandaValentineBites.com, or if there's a guest you would like to hear, etc. I would love to hear from you, and I will talk to you later.
For info on health coaching and more, go to AmandaValentineBites.com.